Okay, let's go. Number 1. The Ghost Pyramid of Zawyet El Aryan. The year is 1902. You are Alessandro Barsanti, an Italian archaeologist working for the Egyptian Antiquities Service, and you are standing in the Egyptian desert midway between the pyramids of Giza to the north and the pyramid field of Abusir to the south. There is no pyramid here. What you are looking at is a massive open trench cut into the bedrock, a descending corridor wider than a road, heading downward at an angle, framed by limestone blocks of extraordinary precision. It is not on any map. It does not appear in any ancient document you have read. Whatever is at the bottom of this passage, nobody from the modern world has seen it yet. You are the first. You begin to descend. The pyramid field of Zawyet El Aryan sits in one of the most scrutinized archaeological landscapes on Earth. The pyramids of Giza are 3 miles to the north. The pyramid cemetery of Abusir is less than 2 miles to the south. Egyptologists have mapped this region for 200 years. The idea that a major structure could sit undocumented between two of Egypt's best-known pyramid fields should be impossible. But that is exactly what Barsanti found. The structure designated by modern archaeologists as Pyramid B at Zawyet El Aryan was, from what remains of its foundation, designed to be enormous, a pyramid that would have rivaled Menkaure's, the third of the Giza pyramids, in scale. The foundation pit alone required the removal of millions of pounds of bedrock. Whoever commissioned this structure intended it to be one of the great pyramids of Egypt. Construction stopped. Nobody knows why. Nobody knows when. What Barsanti found at the bottom of the descending corridor after clearing debris across 2 full excavation seasons was a rectangular chamber cut from solid bedrock and lined with fitted granite and limestone blocks of the place, kind reserved for the most prestigious royal construction. In the floor of this chamber was an oval pit, roughly the shape and dimensions of a sarcophagus prepared for a pharaoh, hollowed directly from the living granite. The pit was empty, no lid, no burial goods. No body, no inscription, no cartouche anywhere in the structure identifying whose pyramid this was meant to be. Here's where it gets strange. Ancient Egyptian pyramid builders were meticulous record keepers. King lists carved in stone record the names and regnal years of pharaohs from the earliest dynasties forward. The administrative papyri from pyramid construction sites like the logbooks found at the Giza harbor in 2013 document individual work gangs, stone deliveries, and the names of overseers by year and month. The pyramids of the 4th and 5th dynasties, between which Zawyet El Aryan appears to fall based on architectural style, are among the best documented construction projects in ancient history. The pharaoh who commissioned this pyramid, who mobilized the labor force, the quarries, the supply chains necessary to cut a foundation pit of this scale, does not appear in any of those records. Not a single contemporary document mentions a pyramid being built at Zawyet El Aryan. Not one king list names the ruler for whom this foundation was prepared. The pyramid was planned and begun by someone who, as far as the surviving historical record is concerned, did not exist. Then, in 1964, the Egyptian military established a restricted zone over the entire site. The official rationale was never publicly documented. The zone covers not just Pyramid B, but the surrounding region, effectively ending archaeological investigation that had been ongoing intermittently since Barsanti's first excavation. No excavation permit has been issued for Zawyet El Aryan in over 60 years. The granite-lined chamber at the bottom of the descending corridor, the room with the oval pit carved from bedrock, has not been entered by archaeologists since the 1960s. Remote sensing surveys conducted from outside the restricted perimeter have identified what appear to be additional architectural features that Barsanti's excavations never reached. Whether those features represent additional chambers, sealed deposits, or geological formations has not been determined. The military zone precludes the investigation that would answer the question. The upper pyramid was never built. Whatever sacred space, whatever apex chamber, whatever capstone or summit marker the architects designed for this structure was never placed. The pyramid exists only as a foundation, an enormous precision-cut hole in the ground, prepared for a pharaoh whose name is lost, abandoned for reasons that are lost, sealed since 1964 for reasons that are not publicly stated. Egyptologist George Andrew Reisner of Harvard documented the site in the early 20th century and attributed it to the 4th dynasty based on the architectural style of the masonry. That dating has not been confirmed by inscription or cartouche because there are none. Some researchers have proposed the structure belongs to a ruler named Bikiris, a name that appears in later king lists but cannot be matched to any confirmed regnal period. Others believe the builder was an entirely unknown pharaoh, erased from the record before the records were complete. The site's modern designation, Pyramid B, reflects the absence of a name. It is a label of default. What pharaoh commissioned a foundation of this scale and then vanished from every record? Why was construction abandoned at exactly this stage, the chamber prepared, the sarcophagus pit cut, the upper structure never begun? What was in the oval granite pit when the workers walked away? What would have stood at the completed apex of one of Egypt's great unbuilt pyramids? And why, in a country that has opened nearly every other ancient site to modern investigation, does the military hold this one, the pyramid, with no name, no builder, no history, off limits to everyone? The gate, as it has been since 1964, is closed. Number 2. The Chogha Zanbil Ziggurat. The year is 1250 BC. You are King Untash-Napirisha, ruler of the Elamite Empire, and you are the only person in your kingdom permitted to be where you are standing right now. You have climbed 4 stages of the ziggurat you commissioned, the baked brick warm under your feet from the sun, the smell of fired clay and desert air at this height different from anything in the city below. The city you built around this structure, an entire walled city, constructed for the sole purpose of housing and serving this building, spreads to the horizon beneath you. The priests who manage the lower courts remain in the lower courts. The craftsmen who raised these walls never stood on the stage you are standing on. The 5th stage, with its summit shrine of Inshushinak, god of the underworld and lord of the city of Susa, rises above you. You will enter that shrine. What happens inside will not be recorded. What is in that room is between you and the god, and no text in the Elamite language will ever describe it. You descend. You do not speak of it. That is how it has always been done. The Chogha Zanbil Ziggurat was built by Untash-Napirisha in the mid-13th century BC, roughly 30 miles southeast of the Elamite capital of Susa, in what is now Khuzestan province in southwestern Iran. It was dedicated to Inshushinak, the patron deity of Susa, and to the sky god Napirisha. It is the best preserved ancient ziggurat in existence outside of Mesopotamia, and was the first site in Iran designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1979. In its original completed form, the ziggurat rose approximately 5 stories to a height estimated at around 170 feet. The building materials were fired and unfired mud brick, arranged in concentric rings with enclosed internal stairways on each face. The structure was surrounded by 3 concentric walled enclosures containing subsidiary temples, administrative buildings, and royal tombs. It was, at the moment of its construction, the center of a purpose-built holy city with no other purpose than to surround this building. Today, 3 stories survive. The upper 2 stories collapsed inward at some point in the centuries following the Assyrian sacking of Susa in 640 BC, when the Elamite Empire ceased to exist as a political entity. The collapsed material from those upper stages is still present at the site, compressed into the interior of what remains. It has not been excavated. The summit shrine of Inshushinak, the room at the top, the house of God, has not been entered by any modern expedition. Here's where it gets strange. Ancient Elamite texts recovered from the site specify the access rules for the ziggurat with bureaucratic precision. The upper stages were not simply elevated and therefore inconvenient to reach. They were designated by law as accessible exclusively to the king and only on specific designated holy days. This was not suggestion or tradition, it was institutional. The priests who served the lower courts were prohibited from ascending. The workers who built the upper stages were not permitted to see what they had built once their work was done. And what the king did during the royal ascent is not written anywhere in the surviving Elamite corpus. The ritual at the summit is the most deliberately undocumented act in Elamite religious practice. Not forgotten, never recorded. The silence was the policy. Untash-Napirisha died before the ziggurat was completed. Construction halted abruptly, some sections left in early stages, materials found in place as if workers simply stopped and did not return. The holy city, built to serve the structure, was never fully inhabited. Archaeological evidence shows the complex saw only limited active use before gradual abandonment. After the Assyrian destruction of Susa in 640 BC, the site was simply left. The alluvial plains of southwestern Iran covered it slowly over the following centuries. French archaeologist Roman Gierschmann excavated Chogha Zanbil between 1951 and 1962, documenting the three surviving stories, the surrounding temple complex, and the royal tombs in the outer enclosure walls. He did not excavate the collapsed upper stage material. His published work makes clear that the compressed mud brick of the two missing stories represents irreplaceable archaeological material that cannot be cleared without significant risk to the lower structure. It is still there. It has been there since the building fell. Since the 1979 Iranian Revolution, access for international research teams has involved complex approval processes that have constrained systematic investigation. The Iranian Cultural Heritage Organization maintains the site for visitors. The collapsed upper stage material, the rubble of the Elamite god's summit house, remains unexcavated above the third story. What is inside the rubble of a room no one but a king was permitted to enter? What ritual was performed at the top of this specific building with such consistency that it required royal restriction and permanent silence in the written record? What was placed in the shrine of a god of the underworld at the summit of the only building in the kingdom where the king went alone? The building is still standing. The god's house at its top is inside the rubble. It has been there, sealed by collapse rather than by door, for approximately 2,600 years. Number 3. Borobudur. The year is 1814. You are Thomas Stamford Raffles, British Governor-General of Java, and your local guide has been describing something for the past hour that you cannot map onto any structure you have ever seen. He says there is a great temple in the jungle to the south, covered by vegetation, not visited by the local population for reasons he cannot fully put into words. He says it is very large. He says the locals do not climb it. You send an engineer ahead, a man named Cornelius, to investigate. He returns having cleared vegetation from a small section of what he found. He tells you the stonework continues in every direction, as far as he cleared carved relief panels, interlocking stone blocks, architectural geometry unlike anything in Dutch, colonial reports from the preceding 200 years. You go yourself. What rises from the jungle of central Java is a 9-tiered stone monument, roughly a third of a mile across at its base, its walls covered in over 2,600 carved narrative panels depicting the life of the Buddha, its upper platforms crowded with 72 perforated stone bell-shaped stupas, all of them ascending toward one central stupa at the absolute summit, large and unperforated and solid-walled, sealed since before anyone living had been born. The structure had been abandoned and buried in volcanic ash and jungle growth for roughly 1,000 years, and the local population, when asked directly, said only that people did not go there. Specifically, they did not go up. Borobudur was built during the Sailendra dynasty of central Java, approximately 800 to 850 CE, as a Mahayana Buddhist monument of a scale that had no precedent in Southeast Asia. The 2,672 carved relief panels on its walls form the longest continuous narrative visual sequence in the world, a visual scripture meant to be read by pilgrims walking the ascending terraces in a clockwise direction from the lowest level to the summit. The structure is also a three-dimensional map of the Buddhist cosmos. The lower levels represent the world of desire, the middle levels, the world of form, the upper circular terraces, the formless world, and the summit, the state beyond all states, nirvana, the point of absolute release from form, from self, from the need to be anywhere at all. The 72 smaller stupas on the upper circular terraces are perforated stone bells, each containing a seated Buddha figure visible through the latticed openings. Every one of these has been documented, photographed, analyzed. The central stupa at the absolute summit is fundamentally different from all of them. It is solid on its exterior. No perforations, no openings, no windows. Its interior has not been documented by any modern investigation. Here's where it gets strange. The UNESCO restoration project that ran from 1973 to 1983 was the most thorough structural analysis of Borobudur conducted in the modern era. The project involved dismantling and reassembling approximately 1 million stone blocks, installing drainage systems, and producing technical documentation of the entire monument. The teams of engineers and archaeologists who conducted that project had full physical access to every surface of the structure. And when it came to the central summit stupa, the formal documentation of the restoration project uses a specific word to describe its interior: unconfirmed. In a document of that precision, produced by fully funded teams with unrestricted physical access to the structure, unconfirmed means exactly what it says. The interior condition of the central stupa was not verified by direct internal inspection during the 10-year restoration. Two explanations exist, and both are credible. The first is architectural and theological. The central stupa is intentionally empty, representing sunyata, the Buddhist concept of emptiness, the recognition that ultimate reality is beyond any object, any symbol, any content. A monument designed as a three-dimensional map of the path to enlightenment terminates at the place where the map ends, where all representation stops. The seal is the message, the closed top is the answer. The second explanation is historical. During the 1,000 years that Borobudur was abandoned, overgrown, and pressed down by volcanic ash, something was placed inside the central stupa, or was sealed there during original construction, and the institutions controlling the site in the modern era chose not to open it. Borobudur is classified by the Indonesian government as an active sacred site. The summit stupa is the holiest point of the most sacred Buddhist monument in the country. The decision not to investigate the interior is not presented as oversight, it is presented as respect. What the decision does not resolve is the question. The sealed stupa may be empty by design, a sealed emptiness, a physical sunyata, an architecture of what cannot be known. Or it may contain something placed there in the silence of 1,000 abandoned years, waiting in a darkness that restoration engineers were authorized to approach, but not to open. 3.5 million people visit Borobudur each year. They walk the ascending path. They look up at the sealed central stupa at the top. Most of them do not know that no one has confirmed what is inside it. A summit sealed by theology, or by history, or by both at once. Either answer is disturbing in its own way. And unlike every other building on this list, this sealed top may have been designed specifically so that no one would ever reach it. Number 4. The Etemenanki. The year is 560 BC. You are a Babylonian priest who has lived your entire life within sight of the Etemenanki, and the view above you takes 10 minutes to comprehend. The tower rises in 7 stages, each face of glazed brick painted a different color: blue lapis lazuli at the summit, white alabaster below it, then descending gradations of yellow and red to the baked ground. The entire structure is roughly 300 feet on each side at the base and 300 feet tall, a perfect cube pressing against the sky. You have stood at its base during the holy festivals and watched the smoke from the summit shrine drift across the rooftops of Babylon below. You have never climbed above the second stage. The upper 5 stages are, by divine law and royal decree, beyond your reach. Only the high priest ascends on the designated holy days. Only the one woman selected annually sleeps in the summit chamber, awaiting the god Marduk, whose private dwelling that chamber is. You are looking up at the bedroom of a god. You will never see what is inside it. This is not deprivation. This is the correct order of things. The name Etemenanki means house of the foundation of heaven and earth in Sumerian. The structure was the religious center of Babylon and, by extension, the center of the known world as Babylonians understood it. Herodotus, visiting in the 5th century BC, described it in his histories with precision. A great tower rising in stages, at its summit a temple with a splendid golden couch and a golden table, where the priest said the god himself descended each night to sleep beside a single chosen woman. The Isagila tablet, a Babylonian administrative document from roughly the same period, gives the structure's intended dimensions with bureaucratic exactness. A base of 295 feet on each side, and a height of 295 feet. A perfect cube, heaven measured and made permanent. Nebuchadnezzar II, ruling in the 6th century BC, rebuilt and completed the version that Herodotus saw, a structure that had stood in earlier forms on that same site for over 1,000 years before him. He inscribed his name on the bricks. He recorded the completion in his royal annals. The summit shrine of Marduk was, by every ancient account, extraordinary. Here's where it gets strange. In 323 BC, Alexander the Great arrived in Babylon, intending to restore the Etemenanki, which had partially collapsed and fallen into disrepair. His engineers began clearing the upper rubble to allow reconstruction. Ancient sources indicate the project was enormous. The accumulated debris of decades of neglect had buried the upper stages under a compressed mass that required months of organized labor simply to shift. Alexander died in Babylon in June 323 BC before the work was finished. The clearing operation stopped. The debris was left where it had been piled. No subsequent ruler completed what Alexander started. The upper stages, their mud brick deteriorating under centuries of rainfall, temperature fluctuation, and agricultural irrigation, continued to collapse downward. By the medieval Islamic period, the site was a debris field so vast it had taken the shape of a natural hill, called Babil, by populations who had no institutional memory of what lay underneath. Robert Koldewey, excavating for the Deutsche Orient-Gesellschaft beginning in 1899, confirmed the base dimensions of the Etemenanki. He found Nebuchadnezzar's name inscribed on the lower-level bricks. He verified that the Esagila tablet's measurements corresponded to the surviving foundation layer. What he could not do was reach the upper stages. The collapsed masonry from above had fallen inward and compressed into a mass of fired brick, unfired brick, organic fill, and centuries of debris that he estimated at tens of thousands of tons. To excavate the collapsed upper material would be to destroy the lower structure it rested on. The summit sanctuary, whatever Nebuchadnezzar's craftsmen placed inside the gold-furnished chamber at the top, was sealed under the weight of its own ruins, and had been for over 2,000 years. In the 1980s, Saddam Hussein conducted a partial restoration of Babylon as a statement about Iraqi national heritage. His government rebuilt visible sections of the Etemenanki's lower stages, using modern brick, a project archaeologists described with careful diplomatic words like well-intentioned but damaging, modern. Bricks bearing Saddam's name were set alongside bricks bearing Nebuchadnezzar's. After the 2003 invasion, coalition military vehicles operated in the immediate vicinity of the site, compacting archaeologically unique soil layers and damaging previously unexcavated sections. The Etemenanki and the broader Babylon complex received UNESCO World Heritage designation in 2019. Archaeologists described the listing as recognition of what had already been lost. The summit shrine of the Etemenanki, the room Herodotus was told, contained a golden couch, and the nightly presence of a god has not been reached since the upper stages collapsed sometime in the centuries following Alexander's death. The rubble above it is irreplaceable archaeological material that cannot be cleared without destroying what it rests on. The site beneath it is compromised by decades of war and political reconstruction in a country that has experienced continuous conflict for over 20 years. Herodotus noted that the priests told him no mortal man had ever spent the night in that summit chamber. The last person to see what was up there died before writing it down. The top of the Tower of Babel is buried. It has been buried since Alexander gave up, and the next building on this list wasn't buried by collapse. Its top was buried by a deliberate act, in broad daylight, after conquest. Number 5. The Pyramid of Cholula. The year is 1519. You're moving through the valley of Puebla with Hernan Cortez's expedition, and the terrain is presenting you with something you cannot immediately categorize. There is a hill in front of you, a large, flat-topped hill, with a regular, symmetrical profile unlike anything in the surrounding landscape. The locals call it Tlaquihualtepetl. The word means made by hand mountain. You look at it, walk around it, look at it again, and your mind insists it is a natural formation because nothing built by human hands is that large. You are standing at the base of the largest pyramid on Earth, and you cannot tell. Neither can Cortez. Neither can any member of the expedition. The pyramid hid itself inside its own scale, and it has been hiding successfully for 700 years. The Pyramid of Cholula is the largest pyramid ever built, by the measurement that counts, total volume. Its volume is approximately 5.8 million cubic yards of material moved and placed by human hands. The Great Pyramid of Giza, the most famous pyramid in the world, the one every comparison reaches for, contains roughly 3.4 million cubic yards. Cholula is built from mud brick rather than cut limestone, but the quantity of material placed is not in question. The base covers more than 1.7 million square feet. The structure rises approximately 180 feet in its current form. It was not built in one effort by one culture. Archaeological analysis confirms 4 overlapping construction phases executed between roughly the 3rd century BC and the 9th century AD. More than 1,000 years of continuous building, each phase enveloping the previous one like geological strata, each new exterior raising the summit higher. By the time Cortés arrived in 1519, the pyramid had been overgrown for centuries. Rainfall, vegetation, and the compression of time had converted the world's largest human construction into something that read as landscape. The Spanish built their city of Cholula around it and on it, without fully recognizing it as a pyramid. In 1594, they built the Iglesia de Nuestra Señora de los Remedios directly on the summit. Not on the slope, not at the base. At the geometric apex, the highest point of the structure, the location of the original pyramid summit platform, the church has stood there for 430 years. It is still an active Catholic parish with regular services and a community that has worshipped at that elevation for 16 generations. Here's where it gets strange. Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History has been excavating tunnels inside the Pyramid of Cholula since the 1930s. The total length of tunnels currently documented inside the structure exceeds 5 miles. That number deserves a moment. 5 miles of tunnel, driven through compressed mud brick, representing nearly a century of systematic archaeological work inside the world's largest pyramid. The network reveals all 4 construction phases. It has documented the internal structure from multiple angles. Artifacts from multiple periods have been recovered. And in all 5 miles of those tunnels, in all those decades of work, no expedition has reached the original summit of the pyramid. The point directly beneath the church altar, the geometric apex of the largest pyramid ever built, has not been accessed from within. Not once. What the tunnels reveal in the zone approaching the summit is an anomaly that the official site literature describes carefully and briefly. The material composition changes in ways that suggest additional enclosed spaces in the upper construction zone. The upper layers are not uniform. There are voids, partial spaces, structural features consistent with sealed interior chambers from one of the earlier construction phases. The tunnels do not extend into that zone. The official reason is structural. Any excavation in the summit area risks destabilizing the foundation that supports a 430-year-old operating church above. That reasoning is architecturally sound. It is also indefinitely convenient. Consider what the tunnels have already established. 4 civilizations built on this spot, one on top of another, over more than 1,000 years. Each construction phase had a summit. Each summit, in the logic of Mesoamerican pyramid construction, held a temple. There may be 4 sealed summit temples stacked inside this pyramid, each one enveloped by the next exterior, none of them documented, the topmost one now beneath a Catholic altar. The Aztec records describe a shrine to Quetzalcoatl at the summit of Cholula, but the pyramid predates the Aztec period by 800 years. The builders of the first 3 phases left no written record. Their summit spaces, what they placed there, what rituals they performed at the apex of the largest structure in the world, are inside the mud brick, unreachable. Think about what the Spanish chose to do. They built a church at the exact geometric apex of the largest pyramid on Earth, not at the base. Not on the approach, at the summit, specifically. Spanish colonial practice of building churches over indigenous sacred sites was documented policy. The church replaced the temple, occupied its location, claimed its symbolic height, or, the summit of Cholula held something the Spanish wanted to seal under Christianity and stone, and 430 years of continuous worship, sealed not by collapse, sealed by deliberate construction, sealed by the weight of a living church that cannot be moved. What was at the original apex of a building raised by 4 civilizations over 1,000 years? What was in the summit spaces now buried inside the mud brick beneath that altar? And did the Spanish know what they were covering when they put their church there, or did they simply follow their policy without looking down? Number 6. El Castillo, Chichen Itza. The year is 2016. You're a geophysicist reviewing the results of an electrical resistance tomography survey conducted at El Castillo, the Great Stepped Pyramid at Chichen Itza, and the cross-section on your monitor is showing you something that requires looking at twice. There is a signal inside a signal inside a signal. You already know about two pyramids here, the outer one that every visitor photographs, and the inner one discovered during restoration work in the 1930s, which contains a red jaguar throne and a reclining Shakmul figure, accessible only through a sealed interior staircase that has been closed to the public for 3 decades. But the tomography is not showing you 2 nested structures, it is showing you 3. Inside the inner pyramid is a third structure, smaller, older, sitting at the geometric center of the building that contains the building that millions of visitors see every year. 3 pyramids nested inside each other like stone Russian dolls. The innermost has never been entered. No entrance to it has ever been found. El Castillo, formerly the Temple of Kukulkan, rises 98 feet above the plaza of Chichen Itza and was built by the Maya around 1000 CE. It is one of the most precisely aligned structures in the ancient Americas. During the spring and fall equinoxes, the shadow cast by the stepped platforms creates the appearance of a serpent descending the north staircase, a visual phenomenon that draws tens of thousands of visitors twice each year. The outer pyramid has 9 stepped levels, 4 stairways of 91 steps each, and a summit temple at the apex. More than 2 million people photograph the exterior every year. During 1930s restoration work, archaeologists discovered that the outer pyramid contained an earlier structure. The inner pyramid was accessed by a sealed tunnel in the north face. Inside it, the red jaguar throne, painted with jade spots, its eyes inlaid with jade, and a Chakmul reclining figure, positioned as if guarding the chamber. The space was ceremonially intact, untouched, since the outer pyramid was built over it. The interior access tunnel was open to the public for decades, drawing visitors into the cramped staircase during high-humidity Yucatan days, and was closed in the 1990s due to conservation damage caused by thousands of visitors breathing in a sealed space. Here's where it gets strange. In 2016, INA researchers René Chavez Segura and Denise Argoti applied electrical resistance tomography, a method that passes electrical current through the earth and maps variations in resistance to reveal subsurface voids and structures, to the full El Castillo complex. The survey returned the third structure, a pyramid nested inside the inner pyramid, estimated to be between 33 and 65 feet tall, sitting at the building's innermost center. Its proportions are different from the outer 2 structures. Its construction suggests it is older than both enclosing versions, perhaps the original El Castillo, the first thing built on this spot before successive generations encased it twice in increasingly larger pyramids. Its summit has never been reached. No entrance to it has been found anywhere in the known passage system. The same survey produced a second result that stops the room. Directly beneath El Castillo's foundation, a cenote. A natural underground sinkhole, the type considered sacred throughout the ancient Maya world, previously unmapped beneath this specific structure. Cenotes held fresh water in a limestone landscape that had none above ground. They were portals to Xibalba, the Maya underworld. The most important sacred deposits in Maya archaeology were thrown into cenotes. The builders of the first El Castillo, the innermost pyramid, chose this exact spot above an underground sacred lake for their original construction. That alignment was not accidental. The pyramid was not placed here despite the water below. It was placed here because of it. 3 nested structures, each encasing the previous, the innermost built to mark a sacred body of water in the underworld below. The outermost is measured by 2 million visitors per year. The middle one has been closed since the 1990s. The innermost has never been approached by any team from any direction. No excavation plan for the third structure has been formally announced by INA as of 2025. The building is considered too significant, too structurally sensitive, and too culturally contested to open by any method that would require disturbing the outer 2 structures. This is the same pattern as the pyramid at Giza. The most studied layer of a structure is its exterior face, and what no one has reached is at the center. The outer pyramid points up toward the sky. The inner pyramid points up toward the sky. The innermost pyramid, the original one, points straight down to sacred water in the earth beneath it. What does it mean to build a summit that marks what is below rather than what is above? What did the builders of the first El Castillo consider so significant about the connection between the top of their structure and the water beneath it that they centered the entire later construction sequence on that axis? The third pyramid has been sitting at the center of the most visited archaeological site in Mexico since it was built, no one knew it was there until 2016. No one has been inside it since the day it was encased and sealed. Number 7. The Tower of Jericho. The year is approximately 8000 BC. You are carrying a limestone block across ground that has no road, no wheel, no cart, toward a construction on the edge of a settlement beside a freshwater spring in a canyon that will one day be called the Jordan Valley. The block will become part of a circular tower. You do not have a word for tower because this is the first one. Nothing like it has ever been built anywhere on Earth. You are doing something no human community has done before. Piling stone on stone in a vertical column, deliberately, to rise above the surrounding ground. Not to live in, not for shelter, not to store grain, to be up there. To reach a specific height above everything else and do something there that requires that height, there is a staircase being built inside this tower. The staircase is the clearest possible evidence of intent. It was built to climb. Someone is going to go to the top of this tower, repeatedly, over what will turn out to be centuries, for a reason so obvious to everyone involved at the time that no one recorded it. Writing will not be invented for another 4,000 years. The reason went with the people who knew it. The Tower of Jericho stands at Tel es Sultan, the site of ancient Jericho in the West Bank, and it is approximately 10,000 years old. It predates the Great Pyramid of Giza by more than 5,500 years. It predates the invention of writing by 4,000 years. It predates the wheel. It was built by a Neolithic community in the pre-pottery Neolithic A period, people who were at or near the beginning of settled agriculture, whose technology was stone tools and collective human labor, and who dedicated a significant portion of that labor to raising a stone tower 28 feet tall, with a 30-foot base diameter and an internal staircase of 22 steps. The staircase is the architectural proof of use. It was not decorative, not structural. It was built to be climbed. Kathleen Kenyon, excavating Tel es Sultan between 1952 and 1958 under the auspices of the British School of Archaeology in Jerusalem, confirmed the tower's age through systematic stratigraphic excavation. Layer by layer, period by period, she dated the construction to the earliest period of the site's occupation. The internal staircase was intact enough to document in full 22 steps descending from the tower's interior upper level to a passage at the base. The lower and middle sections of the tower were documented completely. The original summit could not be recovered. 10,000 years of weathering had eroded or removed the upper courses of stone. The top of the world's first tower is gone. Here's where it gets strange. What Kenyon's excavation could establish from the staircase and the spatial logic of the structure was that the top was reached repeatedly and purposefully over what appears to have been multiple generations of use. The tower was not a one-time construction for a one-time purpose. The staircase implies a recurring activity at the summit. Something happened up there, on a regular basis, for long enough that maintaining a 28-foot stone tower in a Neolithic settlement was considered worth the labor. What that something was is completely unknown. The theories are specific. In 2011, Israeli researchers Roy Liron and Ran Barkai published an analysis in the Cambridge Archaeological Journal demonstrating that the Tower of Jericho is positioned to frame the summer solstice sunset against a specific mountain peak to the northwest. At the precise moment of solstice sunset, from the top of the tower, the mountain peak aligns exactly with the descending sun, an alignment visible from the tower's summit and not from ground level. The tower, in this interpretation, functioned as a calendrical platform, a structure from which one specific astronomical event could be observed in a specific way from a specific elevated position. The staircase took you up to the observation point. The event was the longest day of the year. Whether this is the complete explanation is uncertain. Whether it is part of the explanation is more plausible. The tower's position, its height, and the specificity of the astronomical alignment suggest deliberate design. Defensive theories struggle against the absence of attack evidence at the site during the tower's construction period. Storage theories fail to explain why you would build a staircase to a storage room. Whatever was being done at the top of the Tower of Jericho required being at the top. It required the height. It required the staircase. Further excavation at Tel es Sultan is, as of the present day, a politically complicated undertaking. The site is in the West Bank, under Palestinian Authority administration, subject to ongoing Israeli-Palestinian territorial negotiations, and politically sensitive in ways that make sustained international archaeological access difficult to arrange. The last major excavation program was conducted in the 1990s. The summit of the world's oldest tower is an eroded stub of stone in the desert. The first staircase ever built for the specific purpose of reaching a summit leads to a top that no longer exists, for a purpose that was never recorded, in a location that no expedition can fully investigate. 10,000 years of secrecy, kept not by intention but by time itself. What did the first people who climbed a tower do when they got there? Number 8. The Great Pyramid of Giza. The year is 2017. You're a physicist working with the Institut de Physique Nucléaire de Lyon, and the readout on your monitor is showing you something that should not be possible. The technology you've been applying to the Great Pyramid of Giza for 3 years is called muon tomography. Muons are subatomic particles produced when cosmic rays collide with Earth's upper atmosphere. They penetrate dense matter the way X-rays penetrate tissue. Dense material deflects more of them. Empty space deflects fewer. By placing detector panels inside and around a large structure and recording millions of individual muon trajectories over months of continuous measurement, you can produce a 3-dimensional image of the structure's interior without moving a single stone. What your detectors have returned from the most studied building in human history is a void sitting directly above the Grand Gallery, at minimum 100 feet long, that no one has mapped in 4,500 years of continuous examination. The Grand Gallery is the ascending internal passage known since antiquity. It is 154 feet long and 28 feet high, the most dramatic interior space in any pyramid ever built. Greek tourists walked through it in 450 BC and scratched their names into the stone. Medieval Arab scholars measured it. French engineers mapped it during Napoleon's Egyptian campaign. Every Egyptologist who has worked at Giza since the 19th century has catalogued it. The passage is among the most examined architectural spaces on the planet. And sitting directly above it, running roughly parallel to it in angle and length, registered independently by 4 separate muon detection positions, is an empty space that no instrument, no explorer, no ancient robber, no modern archaeologist detected in 45 centuries of study. The finding was peer-reviewed, published in Nature on November 2, 2017. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities confirmed the discovery the same day. 2 separate detection teams, one French, one Japanese, from Nagoya University, produced independent results that agreed. Infrared thermography and 3D reconstruction imaging from the same Scan Pyramids project corroborated the finding from a completely different angle of measurement. This was not a measurement artifact. This was not a disputed result. This was a large, sealed space inside the world's most analyzed building that every generation before this one had missed. Here's where it gets strange. No entrance to this void has ever been found. Every known chamber in the Great Pyramid connects to the rest of the internal structure through a constructed opening, a doorway, a shaft, a passage. The ascending passage leads to the Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery leads to the King's Chamber. The shafts lead to sealed doors. Everything connects to everything else through architecture. The Scan Pyramids team examined the interior walls of the Grand Gallery with endoscopic probes. They ran ground-penetrating radar along the outer face of the pyramid directly above where the void sits. Nothing. No shaft. No corridor. No concealed panel. The space exists. The way in does not. The official position held by most Egyptologists is that the void is likely a structural feature, a series of relieving spaces above the Grand Gallery, similar in function to the 5 flat chambers above the King's Chamber, built to distribute the weight of millions of tons of limestone around the passage below. This explanation is technically defensible. It becomes much less defensible when you consider the scale. The relieving chambers above the King's Chamber are flat and low, some barely 2 feet high, built for stress distribution rather than occupation. The void above the Grand Gallery is at minimum 100 feet long, with ceiling height that appears significant. Nothing of that volume in any pyramid anywhere functions as a simple stress relief feature, and no other pyramid has a void in this position. The Great Pyramid is the only pyramid with a Grand Gallery. It is also the only pyramid with a massive sealed void directly above one. The builders of the Great Pyramid were precise to tolerances that modern construction would consider exceptional. The king's chamber is aligned to cardinal directions within fractions of a degree. These people did not accidentally leave a massive space above their most important interior passage and forget to put a door in it. They chose not to. The Scan Pyramids team proposed further investigation through controlled endoscopic, probing a camera through the minimum possible drill point to see inside without damaging the structure. The Egyptian government has not approved this. As of 2025, no probe has entered the void. The pattern is not new. In 1993, Rudolf Gantenbrink sent a small robot into the Queen's Chamber's southern shaft and found a limestone door with copper handles at 213 feet. The Egyptian Antiquities Authority revoked his access permit before he could return to investigate. 9 years passed before another team reached that door. The door led to a gap, and behind the gap was a second door, and behind that door were hieroglyphs on a chamber wall no human had entered in 4,500 years. Those hieroglyphs have still not been fully published. The Great Pyramid is 481 feet tall. Every known chamber sits in the lower third of that height. The upper two-thirds, by mass and volume, were assumed for 45 centuries to be solid stone. That assumption is wrong. There is a sealed space in that upper interior, connected to nothing, accessible from nowhere, waiting in absolute darkness. What requires a sealed room at the top of the most watched building in human history, with no way in? What did they put up there that was not meant to be found? And why has every institution that has controlled this site, upon finding evidence of the sealed interior, decided to wait? Number 9. Nuraghe Su Nuraxi. The year is 1500 BC. You are on an island in the center of the Mediterranean, and you are raising a limestone block that weighs several tons by methods that will leave no record. The block is going to become part of a circular tower. You may not have a word for what you are building, because this design exists nowhere else in the world, not in Egypt, not in Mesopotamia, not in any civilization currently operating on any other coastline. The structure taking shape on this hill is yours alone. When the final course is set and the capstone is placed, this tower will be the highest point in your landscape for as far as the eye can reach. Something will happen at the top. The activity that requires being at the top, the specific thing that made it worth hauling stone upward on a Mediterranean island, is the entire reason this tower exists. That purpose was understood by every person working alongside you. 3,500 years from now, it will be understood by no one. You left no word for it. You left only the stone. Sardinia contains over 7,000 structures called Nuraghe, 7,000. On a single island approximately 170 miles long and 90 miles wide. The Bronze Age civilization that built them left no deciphered writing, no identified rulers, no surviving origin story, and no confirmed explanation of what the towers were for. They built the most tower-dense landscape in all of prehistoric Europe, maintained that construction effort across roughly 800 years, and then stopped, without a text, without an image, without a single document that a later civilization could read. The Phoenicians arrived on Sardinia in the 9th century BC. The Romans arrived in 238 BC. Both civilizations occupied the island, while the Nuragic civilization was still present in some form. Neither recorded an explanation of the towers from the people who had built them. Nuraghe Su Nuraxi at Borobudur is the largest and most complex nuraghe on the island. Construction began around 1500 BC. Over following centuries, it expanded into a multi-tower fortress complex surrounded by a village of stone huts. UNESCO designated it a World Heritage Site in 1997. The main tower, the Torre Centrale, originally stood 3 to 4 stories tall, approximately 65 feet high. The upper 2 stories collapsed at some point after the Nuragic period, leaving the lower 2 intact. The summit of the Torre Centrale, the highest point of the highest structure in the landscape during its active period, is rubble. It cannot be climbed. What it contained cannot be reached. Here's where it gets strange. The collapse is not the only problem. The problem is that excavating the collapsed upper zone would require dismantling and sorting rubble from a UNESCO World Heritage Site on a scale that has not been funded or authorized. Italian archaeologists Enrico Contu and Giovanni Liliu, working at Su Nuraxi beginning in 1949, cleared and documented the accessible levels. What they found in the upper accessible zones, the areas just below where the collapse begins, included artifacts inconsistent with simple residential or defensive use, objects placed with deliberateness, items that appeared in ritual contexts rather than domestic or military ones. The upper levels of the tower served a function that was different from the lower levels. The evidence says something specific happened up there. The evidence does not say what. Consider what 7,000 of these towers means. Building a nuraghe required organizing labor on a significant scale. The stones at Su Nuraxi weigh up to several tons each, and the precision of the corbelled vault construction required skill and coordination. This was not opportunistic or casual building. This was a sustained civilizational commitment to a specific architectural form, replicated 7,000 times across a single island over 800 years. The Nuragic people also built sacred wells, round-vaulted underground water chambers, approached by stone stairways, and elaborate megalithic collective burial monuments called giants' tombs. They had complex religious and social systems. The towers existed alongside these other structures, not in replacement of them. Something specific happened in towers that didn't happen at the wells or the tombs. Something specific happened at the top of the towers that didn't happen at the bottom. No complete nuraghe with its full upper stories intact has survived anywhere on the island. Every excavated nuraghe, with accessible upper levels, shows evidence of the same pattern. The higher you go, the less the function resembles habitation or defense, and the more it resembles something else. That something else has no name in any surviving language because the Nuragic people gave it no name that anyone preserved. What required 7,000 towers and 800 years? What activity, repeated 7,000 times across a single island, demanded a specific elevated position, a specific construction form, and a specific height above the surrounding ground? The towers are still there. The tops are not. And the people who knew what the tops were for have been gone long enough that even the language in which they understood it has been completely lost. The silence the Nuragic civilization left behind is not absence. It is the most complete sealed record in European prehistory. Number 10. The Black Pyramid of Amenemhat III. The year is approximately 1850 BC. You are an Egyptian architect, and you are watching your pyramid destroy itself. It is happening slowly, over weeks and months, rather than in a single visible collapse, but it is happening. The outer casing stones are moving. The angles you surveyed with precision at the start of construction no longer match what stands in front of you. The joints between the outer courses of stone are opening under pressure that should not be there. The ground beneath the Dashur Plateau, 25 miles south of Cairo, is not what the initial survey indicated. The alluvial soil here sits above a water table that is deeper and more active than anyone anticipated, and the combined weight of millions of mud brick blocks is pressing into ground that is slowly, incrementally failing beneath it. Cracks are appearing in the outer casing. The mortar lines are showing stress fractures in a pattern consistent with subsidence, the foundation settling unevenly, the building pressing itself into the earth at different rates in different sections. You are building the tomb of Pharaoh Amenemhat III, ruler of the 12th dynasty, and his tomb is sinking before it is finished. The pharaoh is informed. The project is abandoned. He will need a different pyramid. Amenemhat III ruled during the 12th dynasty, approximately 1860 to 1814 BC, and is one of the few pharaohs in Egyptian history known to have commissioned two separate pyramid tombs. The first was the Black Pyramid at Dashur. The second was the pyramid at Hawara in the Fayum Oasis, where he was actually buried. The Black Pyramid was never used for its intended purpose. The man it was built to house did not end up inside it. Its outer casing was eventually stripped for building material by later generations, leaving the mud brick core exposed to 4,000 years of Egyptian weather. The oxidized mud brick weathers to a dark brown black, which is where the modern name comes from. The pyramid currently rises approximately 160 feet from the desert floor, a blunt, irregular mound, its original pyramid geometry visible only in plan view and in what the foundations reveal. The internal passage system of the Black Pyramid is the most deliberately complex ever designed for a pyramid of its period. This was not accidental. Amenemhat III's architects constructed a labyrinthine network of corridors, false passages, concealed portcullises, trap antechambers, and deliberately dead-ending galleries intended to confuse, delay, and ideally kill tomb robbers. The system was engineered with remarkable thoroughness. It worked. The burial chamber at the center of the internal structure was not identified and entered until 1900, when French archaeologist Jacques de Morgan forced his way through the passage system, and described it as the most deliberately confusing internal architecture he had encountered in Egyptian archaeology. It took him and his team considerable time and effort to navigate a system built to be unnavigable. Here's where it gets strange. When De Morgan reached the burial chamber, the quartzite-lined room at the center of the passage system, built to hold the pharaoh who never arrived, he found it empty. The sarcophagus was present, a massive quartzite box of high craftsmanship, cut and polished at significant expense. No mummy, no grave goods, no evidence that the chamber had ever been used for burial. The pharaoh it was built for had been interred 40 miles away at Hawara while this pyramid sat waiting. But the burial chamber showed something that the abandonment of the pyramid doesn't by itself explain: evidence of water damage. The chamber walls bore signs of moisture penetration, consistent with the subsurface water table having risen into the interior, at some point water reaching a room built specifically to house a royal burial. What makes this specifically strange is the chamber's position. Unlike most Egyptian pyramid burial chambers, which are below the pyramid's base, the burial chamber of the Black Pyramid is elevated above ground level. The passage system descends from the entrance, then rises sharply to reach the burial chamber above the foundation level. The architects elevated the chamber specifically to keep it above the troublesome water table they had discovered too late. The water reached it anyway. The ground beneath the Black Pyramid was more compromised than even the casing failure had suggested. The external summit of the Black Pyramid is unreachable by any standard archaeological expedition. The collapsed outer casing has left the summit zone as unstable compressed rubble above a mud brick core that may still contain intact internal architecture in its upper sections. The original intended height was approximately 256 feet. The current height is approximately 160 feet. The top 96 feet of intended structure is either gone or compressed into the unstable rubble at the summit zone. No team has attempted to reach the external summit. The internal labyrinth does not connect to the upper external zone. The top of the Black Pyramid is, by any practical definition, unreachable. What is left? A pyramid built for a pharaoh who never came. An empty sarcophagus in a chamber flooded by the earth it was built to sit above. A labyrinthine passage system that successfully protected an empty room for 3,700 years. And a summit that cannot be reached from inside or outside the structure. 10 buildings, 10 sealed tops. The ghost pyramid between Giza and Abu Sir, built for a pharaoh who doesn't exist in any record, sealed by the military since 1964. The muon void above the Grand Gallery. 3 nested pyramids pointing at sacred water below. The Babylonian god's bedroom, buried under 2,300 years of rubble. The world's largest pyramid crowned with a church. The Buddhist monument whose sealed summit might be the theology itself. The world's oldest staircase going nowhere anyone can find. The Elamite king's private summit sealed by collapse. 7,000 prehistoric towers with missing tops and no explanation. And the pyramid abandoned by its own pharaoh, built for a burial that went somewhere else, its summit unreachable, its interior empty. From Egypt to Iraq, Mexico to Iran, Indonesia to Sudan, the same pattern repeats across 10,000 years of human building. Someone reached the top, decided what went there, and ensured that no one coming later would be able to check. If you want to keep finding what they sealed and why, subscribe, like this video, and leave us a comment with which of these summits you'd reach first, and tell us where you're watching from.